Greetings, and welcome to Skylanders Portalcasters, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything Skylanders. I'm your host, GFDitto, and I'm joined today by co-host Inklander, and in today's Valentine's Day special, we're going to be discussing the Skylander that I disqualified from the list when we discussed our favorites, because they're just that overpowered. We're going to be discussing Magna Charge, and why he is the most overpowered Swap-Force character of them all. So, Inklander, how are you feeling today?
Doing pretty good. How about you, Ditto?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited for this discussion.
Yes, me too. Should be a lot of fun. This is basically going to be a love letter, if you will, to Magna Charge, because he's just pretty great no matter what situation you put him in.
Exactly. And happy Valentine's Day to you, Inklander, and to all of our listeners out there.
Yes, happy Valentine's. Hope everyone enjoys this wonderful capitalistic holiday. And, whether you are planning on sitting at home eating Rocky Road and watching rom-coms by yourself, or whether you're going to go have a nice romantic dinner with your significant other. Whatever the case may be, we hope that you have a wonderful day and are happy that you're joining us for this Valentine's episode.
Absolutely. Before we get too in detail on the possibilities, or rather the swap-abilities for Magna, let's go over a basic rundown of Magna Charge and what he is capable of.
Yes. So, one of the really cool things about Magna Charge, specifically the Magna top half, is that he has the highest DPS, or damage per second, out of any of the characters, any of the Skylanders, up through Trap Team. One of the great things about his Magnet Cannon is that he's dealing 25 points of damage with every shot that he takes at the enemy. And, he's able to deal this, a couple times, roughly around like 6 times or so, before he kind of has it charged up all the way. And then when you hit the button again, it deals this even greater blast, where it kind of discharges all that kind of built-up energy with the gauge that he has. And so because of this, you're able to really deal a lot of damage very quickly, deal even more damage with that final discharge, and then just be able to keep building it up again and again and again. And once you get a hang of that kind of system there, it's pretty easy to deal just a lot of damage and just plow your way through enemies with Magna.
Absolutely. And that final blast from the Magnet Cannons does home. So even if your aim's just a little bit off, or even if the enemy is on a different vertical plane than Magna is, oftentimes that final blast will still hit them, and hit them hard.
Yeah, because that final blast, while the regular shots are dealing 25 points of damage, that final blast is going to be dealing 71. So that's pretty powerful stuff, and it's definitely not something to turn your nose at. Like, he's able to deal this quick, he's able to deal it fast, and it's definitely useful, especially in, Nightmare mode as well, where enemies have more health. This is going to be something that's going to help you finish off those enemies even faster.
Absolutely. And then standard as Magna Charge, before you've swapped anything, his attack 2 is a charge attack, or rather a sort of dash attack, that allows him to zip around and kind of just drag enemies around with him.
Yes.
So that disables their ability to fight back. Granted, that's limited to smaller enemies, but he can grab 1 to 2 of those at a time and just drag them around while he's dashing.
Yeah. Any kind of larger enemies, like, gear golems or heavy enemies as they're described in the Chaos Doom Challenge and Trap Team, they're not going to be able to be dragged, but the smaller ones, yeah, he's going to be able to drag them, kind of clear up the stage a little bit, especially if he's cornered, and then be able to deal some damage with them by, throwing them, by, tapping the secondary attack again, and that's actually really cool, to the point where you can even, just throw them off the stage if you want, if you're doing a arena battle, which is kind of handy. Yeah, and then his third attack is Polarized Pickup, which acts kind of similarly to the secondary attack, but there it's going to be able to pick up enemies. If there aren't enemies nearby, it's going to kind of create this metal object above him that he can kind of use as a projectile by tapping the button again. But also while that's active, pretty much any kind of collectible that's nearby is going to be pulled towards Magna Charge. So anything like food or money, that's going to be pulled towards him. So really, his attack style is pretty awesome, and the fact that he has a really high DPS with his primary, and then his secondary and tertiary allow you to kind of pick up items that are going to be useful, or pick up enemies and toss them either into each other or off the stage, whatever it might be. And that's actually really useful stuff, and that kind of all together is why Magna Charge is really powerful, especially because of that primary attack, because Magna is just really great at just dealing damage really quick, and it kind of makes the top half of the character really perfect for tons of different swap abilities.
Yes, we've mentioned before how there is a swappability for every occasion. And what I mean by that is there is a Magna swappability for every occasion. Well, his Magna Charge form is actually really good because it does add speed and allows for the dragging and throwing of enemies. That's not the fastest Magna can get. Need to go quick? Magna Jet. Take the bottom half of Boom Jet, swap it in, and Magna is ready to dash through entire stages as long as he doesn't have to jump. And the speed boost he gains from this is incredible.
Yeah, very true. Boom Jet is one of the fastest Skylanders, just generally, at least up through Trap Team. And, you know, Magna has the highest DPS out of all the characters up through Trap Team. So what's the best way to get high DPS and high speed put together? Well, just make Magna Jet, and you have the perfect combo of really high DPS and really high speed.
Which makes for the ultimate speedrunning character.
Yes.
Now, whether you be in the arena or stuck at a battle gate, if you're trying to avoid taking any sort of damage, shift. Take the bottom half of Night Shift, swap it in, you get Magna Shift. And Magna Shift is capable of then very rapidly dodging not only enemy attacks, but dodging through enemy attacks without taking a single point of damage.
Yeah.
Which comes in handy a lot for challenge runs, especially if you're trying to keep up a multiplier.
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Especially when you're trying to deal with some of the heavier enemies, not only in Swap-Force, but in any of the games, really. But, you know, it's definitely great when kind of going up against some of the Gear Golem types as well, just being able to use Shift, kind of get out of there, not take any points of damage, and then continuing to use that high DPS of Magna to be able to continue to deal damage once you've done that shift. Really important kind of use of the bottom half of Night Shift there.
And then on a similar note, if there's a lot going on the ground, be there shock waves, the beam coming from Chaos in the final stages of the final battle of Swap-Force, or there's too many hazards on the ground, aerial dodging. Swap in the bottom half of Spy Rise to get Magna Rise, then you have that same high DPS on a character that can basically leap off of the world itself, hang tight in the air for several seconds, and then drop down wherever you need them to be for the best vantage point.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, that's definitely really, really useful to be able to, you know, kind of dodge, not take damage for a little bit, and kind of plan out exactly where you want to drop down into the level. So, you know, it kind of really does go to show, especially with Magna in particular, just how useful the swappability kind of mechanic introduced in Swap-Force can be. Because, you know, Magna is pretty much definitively the best top half of any character. And while, yeah, tons of them are fun, of course, and everyone's going to have their own personal favorite, like, Magna is pretty much objectively the best when it comes to dealing damage. And so being able to actually combine that with other different parts of Skylanders to be able to, you know, avoid taking damage or to be able to, you know, get a boost of speed, really kind of shows off how important the swappability mechanic of the Swap-Force is, because it's just taking the best part of, you know, Magna Charge, the top half, being the insane amount of damage he can deal at one time, with pretty much whatever else you're going to be needing.
Exactly. Another couple of little examples of this are if you're, for whatever reason, trying to sneak around undetected, you're not worrying about hazards, you're just worrying about the enemies. You're trying to go undetected, maybe trying to avoid detection by a tech gear golem, for example. Bottom half of Stink Bomb, Magna Bomb, allows for Magna Bomb to then go invisible to walk around, so he can remain undetected, and then kind of appear behind the enemy and once again activate that high DPS. Or if things are getting kind of tight, similar to how they tend to get in arena battles, especially at higher difficulties, with the smaller enemies, if you switch in Rattleshake's bottom half for Magna Shake, you have the ability to fling a number of enemies away from you at one time, and then immediately lay back on that DPS to try and preserve yourself a little bit more, keep that distance, so that they can't hit you as quickly as you can take them.
Yeah, that's actually a really great example, because, Magna Charge kind of has that ability to be able to kind of deal with enemies in the case of being able to drag them behind you or being able to pick them up. But Magna Shake does that kind of similarly, but instead it just kind of clears the area. It just gives you a little bit more space to be able to have time to consider what you're going to be doing with these enemies, so you're able to push them back and then be able to deal some damage or kind of quickly figure out a new plan on how to exactly deal with that particular situation.
And then if you happen to be taking on some of the more difficult challenges in Skylanders, like say a Nightmare difficulty run, it's a great idea to keep in mind that Magna, even if you're having trouble clearing out the enemies by pure DPS, can always just pick up those pesky enemies one at a time and yeet them off the nearest cliff for an instant defeat.
Yeah, like that is really nice, and that is a difference again from Magna Shake, because Magna Shake's just going to deal some damage to them, push them back, but with Magna, if you're in like a boss arena or an arena battle or something like that, if there's an edge, you can literally just pick up the enemy and throw them off, and it's an instant kill. Really useful, really useful.
Absolutely. While Magna does have the ability to pick up any enemy out there, excluding the heavy ones, while he does this, he tends to draw in food and money, but what he can't pick up is legendary treasures. So let's go ahead and be off on our legendary treasure hunt.
It looks like it's time for another legendary treasure hunt. And today's challenge was in the Valentine spirit to try to find the lot with the most Skylanders that have purple on the figure. This could be pretty much any amount of purple whatsoever. We didn't need it to be like 50% or more. It's just like if they have even the tiniest sliver of purple, it counts as a point. So we're scoring this as per usual as 1 point for every Skylander that has purple on it, and then half a point for every $5 under the price limit, this time of $55, and minus half a point for every Shroom Boom in the lot, as per usual. So, Ditto, why don't you go ahead and start off detailing your lot, and tell us where you got it, how much it is, and just kind of what figures are included.
Well, I found my lot this week on OfferUp, and in the spirit of Valentine's Day, I felt it best to present a revenge lot, which this lot really is. I'm not entirely sure, I haven't counted the precise number of figures in this lot, but in the way of figures with purple, my lot contains 2 Cinder, Thumpback, Flashwing, and Spitfire, for 5 Skylanders with purple. There are also, I would estimate, 35 to 40 other Skylanders figures, a couple of Disney Infinity figures.
Yes, those are my favorite Skylanders.
3 different Skylanders portals, the Imaginite portal, the Swap-Force portal, and the Superchargers portal, along with PS3 copies of Swap-Force and Superchargers, as well as 11 other PS3 games, including Disney Infinity, and a Star Wars movie. And the reason I say this is a revenge lot is because I found all of this for the low, low price of $1.
Yep. Yeah, $1 for all this stuff. Pretty crazy, you know? It's like tons of figures, tons of games, tons of portals. You got the movie thrown in there. It's definitely one of those things where it's like, what did this person do to you to where now you're selling all their stuff?
Exactly. I have to wonder.
Yep. You know, so I feel like this is very much in the spirit of the spitefulness of Valentine's Day. So good job on your find, Ditto.
Well, thank you.
Yes, and we definitely, just to make sure, we did kind of put in the hex codes. Like, we took pictures of some of the Skylanders we were unsure of, like Spitfire. We put them in Illustrator, and we got the hex code of their figure, just to make sure that, you know, they did indeed have purple. We did take the time for that. So, Ditto, your lot has 5 different Skylanders that happen to have purple on them, so that's 5 points. And then you do have the Shroom Boom, so that is minus half a point. So that brings you to 4.5 points. And then, because you are so far below the $55 limit, I mean, you're pretty much, you know, rounding up $50 under the limit. That gives you 5 additional points, bringing you up to 9.5 points. But because you found such a great deal here, you have to get bonus point in this episode. So that's going to bring you up to 10.5 points for your final total there, because it's just, this is a crazy amount of stuff in this lot. Like, you have tons of video games, tons of portals, tons of characters that you're able to choose from. You got a movie thrown in there. It's an insane amount of stuff, all for $1. Pretty cool.
It is really cool. It actually makes it worth all that stuff that's not Skylanders.
Yeah, that is true. Because typically, you know, I don't collect Disney Infinity stuff. I'm not really, you know, interested in, you know, having any of that. But, like, you can always just, like, sell that yourself or give it away to a friend who does like it, whatever the case may be, and just, you know, get all the Skylander stuff in this lot. Because, like, you might as well when it's just $1.
Especially since there are some pretty good Skylanders in there. I mean, yeah, there is the Shroom Boom, which is downside. But also, on top of the purple Skylanders, there's a couple swappables in there. There's the Washbuckler, there's a Firecracken, you've got the Winterfest Lobstar, Gusto. There are some really good figures in here.
Yes, very true. Couldn't agree more. So this would definitely be something you would want to pick up as a Valentine's gift for yourself.
Absolutely. Now, what about your lot?
Yes, so as for my lot, I found it on eBay, no surprise there. The price of it is $22, and it consists of 7 different Skylanders, 5 of which are purple. So that would be Starcast, Mini Genie, Ningini, Eon's Elite Voodooed, who has the purple on his staff there, and Series 1 Spyro. The lot also comes with a Series 1 Double Trouble and a Series 1 Voodooed. They do not have purple on their figure, but still, nice bonuses. So, the 5 different characters that happen to have purple brings my initial total up to 5. And I am $33 under the limit of $55, which if you round that down to 30, that gives me 3 additional points for being $33 under the price limit of $55. So, that would bring my grand total this episode up to 8 points. So, Ditto, you are definitely the winner this episode by far with 10.5 points, because you just found a great deal for such a great price, and that's really what put your lot way over the edge this time.
I do feel the need to point out, though, that your Eon's Elite Voodooed, in its collector's case, is a really, really nice find.
That is true. It is definitely nice to see an Eon's Elite still in box in a lot. You don't really tend to see that happen too often.
No, you don't, and honestly, if I was hosting this Legendary Treasure Hunt, despite my great deal, I would have given the point to your lot because of that Eon's Elite.
Oh, well, thank you. But I mean, I don't know. Definitely appreciate that, Ditto, but I just have to give the bonus point to you because you found yet another awesome deal that just can't be denied in my book.
Well, thank you.
So in this Valentine's episode, it seems Ditto has won this legendary treasure hunt. Congrats.
Thank you, and good game.
Yes, good game, as always. It's always fun. And I definitely kind of liked our Valentine spin on it a little bit. It's definitely enjoyable.
Absolutely. It was great fun trying to find a lot for this particular special.
Oh, it looks like Blobbers is waving us over to the Dread Yacht. That's kind of interesting. He seems to be in quite a hurry. All right, we better go ahead and hop aboard, talk to Flynn, and try to head off to wherever Blobbers is trying to take us.
Here we are aboard the Dread Yacht. This is kind of an interesting situation wherein Inklanders had to take the wheel because Flynn and Blobbers are hanging over the railing. It looks like they got some sort of magnet stuck to the hull. Typical. And Blobbers is insisting that we actually need this to access our next destination. So of course they would drop it overboard. I can't with these two anymore. But it appears that Inklander has steered us safely, more safely than Flynn ever has, to the entrance of the lost Imaginite mines. Let's have a look around.
Awesome, yes. So here we are in the lost Imaginite mines, and it seems with the help of Magna Charge's tertiary ability, we've been able to pull the magnet off the hull. So now we're able to use it to be able to help traverse our way through the mines here. And my initial impression, especially once you get the magnet in this level, is it reminds me a whole lot of Vault of the Ancients from Skylanders Superchargers, which isn't exactly one of my favorite levels to begin with, because it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of tedious a little bit. Like, the level feels a little long. The mechanic is kind of interesting. They do interesting things with it in Vault of the Ancients, but I don't know, for the most part it does kind of feel a little, I would say maybe not as refined. And here it does kind of feel the same way again. They, yet again, do have a couple interesting puzzles. Like, they do kind of use the magnet in a kind of cool way with a, where you're trying to roll these bombs by using the magnet into walls or into pedestals, kind of like the Ball and the Doohingus puzzles from Skylanders Trap Team, but just done in a unique way, where instead you're using a magnet instead of kind of playing pinball. So, it's kind of okay in that regard, but for the most part it doesn't really try to do anything new in regards to the magnet. It just kind of feels like they needed a mechanic and they decided to reuse something they kind of already had in the engine, and they just put that in the level. So the whole kind of first part of it, it's pretty obvious they kind of reuse this idea. They even reuse a lot of the assets from Cradle of Creation from the first level in the game, where once you get into the mines, it looks very much like they've just kind of reorganized and reused some of the assets that they created, which is, understandable when they're making DLC for the game. But overall, the first part of this I wasn't too impressed with. But then the second part I actually find a little bit more enjoyable, where you're on the Imaginite cache and you're trying to fight some enemies on the way to the exit. That, I think, is a little bit more interesting and a little bit more unique, where you're kind of like on rails in a way, but you're able to like hop off, explore around in the traditional Skylanders fashion, but you are trying to use this platform to move the Imaginite cache along a particular route. And that kind of felt cool. Like, that definitely was a bit of a different kind of mechanic that we didn't see before, and that's been implemented, so I definitely really enjoyed that. And that was kind of fun. But for the most part, where I think this level kind of shines the most is with Blobbers in particular, because we have that whole scene where once you get to the Imaginite cache, Blobbers just kind of goes crazy a little bit, and he's like, what if I just use this to right all the wrongs that have been done to me throughout the years. And it has like flashbacks to like Spyro's adventure and like Giants where he's been left behind or where he's been trapped behind a turtle and everything. And he like tries to like, reach for it and tries to, recreate the world pretty much. And then like, once he touches it, all the security systems get activated, and that's when you transition to the second part of the level. And like that whole like cutscene is kind of funny. I really enjoy that because it also kind of, in many ways, feels like a good hint at like what Blobbers could have been like as a villain. Because I always like it when villains have this kind of background where it's not just like they're evil because the story needed a villain, so they have an evil villain. Like Blobbers is here where it's like, he's had all these wrongs done to him, he's always been forgotten, he's always been just left out of things, and his desire to like try to use this for good, but it backfires. Like that kind of feels like the start of a very interesting kind of villain plot. Which is kind of funny because I don't know, like Blobbers has always been kind of silly, and he definitely is very silly here too. But it kind of, I don't know, it kind of memes up Blobbers even more, but also at the same time, it really kind of makes me like wish we had gotten like another game where like maybe Blobbers was the like main antagonist. Would have been kind of fun. So I really enjoyed that. But for the rest of the level, at least for the first half with the magnet, I kind of thought it was okay. The second part definitely gets a little bit better. And the boss fight at the end, where it's like the giant robot kind of attacking you and doing these like electric ground pounds with its fists, I really like that. The thing that I feel like would have just made that part just a little bit better, this mine was supposed to be created by the Archeans. It would have been really cool to have seen an Archean Conquertron be like the boss that was doing that at the end. But that's just like a little nitpick. Otherwise, I think the level starts off kind of mediocre. The Blobber stuff is really cool, and then the second half really kind of brings it all into its own, for me anyway.
Well, just as you said, I would agree that the whole Blobbers plotline definitely added something great to this level. It was comedic, it was very Blobbers.
Yes.
And I also really enjoyed the flashbacks. It almost seemed very much like a Doofenshmirtz-esque sort of villain backstory, and I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it would have been really, really fun to have seen, like, them try to do that even more with, like, a full game. Because, like, Chaos isn't one-dimensional, but he does have that line, I think, in Superchargers, where he's like, in case you haven't figured it out already, I'm the bad guy. And it's like, well, that's kind of boring. Like, you don't want the bad guy thinking that they're the bad guy, It's
right?
like, that's no fun. You want a bad guy who feels like they're justified, that they're doing the right thing. Like they feel like they're doing the right thing even though they're going about things in the wrong way. And I really like the idea that maybe Blobbers could kind of be that. Like, and I also really just love how, like, the flashbacks are to, like, Spyro's Adventure and Giants, and, like, the cutscenes are just, like, so bad. like it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, yeah, it's flashback to that graphics engine. It's just kind of funny. I mean, granted, Imaginators doesn't look the greatest either, but, even comparing Imaginators to, like, the old, outdated graphics engine of Spyro's Adventure and Giants, it's just like, whoa, that's a big difference. But I think that made the flashbacks just kind of work even more, honestly.
I agree that the primary mechanic in this level felt a lot like the Vault of the Ancients, which, honestly, in the Vault of the Ancients, I thought it was flimsy and it didn't work so well. They did refine it a bit here, and so a lot of it did work a bit better than it did back in Superchargers. But using a magnet for a ball in the Duhingus style puzzle kinda didn't sit well with me, especially since those are the puzzles I tend to like the least, especially from a speedrunning perspective. Because, for example, back in Trap Team, Know-It-All Island, you have to roll the boulders into the hole to use the geysers to launch you up to the next area. That style of puzzle is kind of finicky as it is when it comes to just trying to rush through it, but then to add a magnet style element to it where you have to use the magnet because you can't touch it, it added a challenge level to it, I'll give it that, but it just made it a little bit more unwieldy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the level, as you mentioned with the Imaginite payload, that was actually a really unique way to use the auto-scroller mechanics that we often see in these games as well. As opposed to what they did in Trap Team's Monster Marsh with Marcia and the Poison Swamp.
Oh, yeah.
The Imaginite payload feels like it works so much better, and it allows more for exploration as well. Just the payload will stop moving because the magnet is too far away. It is actually done in such a way that it's really fun, really unique, even to a mechanic that we've seen before, and it worked out really well. Then following into the boss fight, using the magnet mechanic there to sling bombs at the boss's shield, once again, I really felt like that was rather unwieldy and just slowed down the boss fight quite a lot. And I feel like it might have been better off without the magnet there.
Yeah, I can definitely agree.
But that wouldn't necessarily work within the storyline of the level.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I definitely would agree that it did feel out of place. Like, I appreciate what they were trying to do with that by trying to, you know, bring that mechanic that you had earlier in the level and kind of use that in the boss fight. But yeah, I agree. They probably could have left the magnet thing behind and just kind of had it be a little bit more of a traditional kind of boss fight, kind of like Drill X in a way, because the boss kind of sort of reminds me of the Drill X boss fight, just a little bit. The arena's smaller, but you know, it has like the smashing kind of going on, and you're trying to have to dodge. You're trying to have to dodge things. So I feel like if they'd maybe left it to be a little bit more traditional and not had those like bombs that you have to like roll into the boss to be able to take out the shields, I probably would have liked it a little bit more. Overall, I don't think it was like the worst boss fight in the game by any means, but they definitely
not.
Yeah, they definitely could have refined it.
As you said, I feel like the magnet was it just felt a little out of place, and traditional would have been better. But in the overall grand scheme of things, this level was, I feel like, it was a really good one. It was pretty fun. It was exactly what you would expect for a DLC stage in Imaginators.
Yeah, I would say so. You know, here, like, I actually think, you know, while the first part of it felt a little samey and just kind of a little out of place with the magnet and trying to get into the mines, once you have the payload and you're trying to, you know, move that through the rest of the level, I think it picks up kind of dramatically in many ways and kind of makes it a fairly decent DLC level from Imaginators, honestly. Like, it's actually pretty decent.
So now that we've enjoyed our very thorough tour of the Lost Imaginite mines, I feel like it would be best if we get out of here before Flynn or Blobbers has the opportunity to touch anything and potentially wake the Rubble Maker. I'd rather we not have to summon Skylanders to deal with that right now, so let's be off.
We're on our way back to the Academy with the Imaginite cache that we got from Lost Imaginite Mines. But of course, before we can completely get there and finish our mission and give the cache to Master Eon, we figured we had to stop at the Archean Arena. So here we are yet again. Ditto, why don't you go ahead and tell us what Skylander you have brought to the fight in this episode.
Alright, Inklander, so for this week's bout of theoretical combat, I have brought with me Granite Crusher.
Ooh, okay.
Granite Crusher is a melee earth element Skylander with a maximum HP at level 20 of 1,410, critical hit 62, armor 45, speed 32, and luck 26. His attack 1 is called Crusher's Crusher, and it swings around his crusher, or his hammer, for 74 points of damage per hit. His attack 2 is Turn to Stone, which doesn't deal any damage, but releases a beam from his eyes that temporarily petrify his enemies. And his attack 3 is called Rock Slide, which allows Crusher to collapse into a pile of rubble that rolls around, dealing 26 points of damage to anything in its wake. For his upgrade paths, the top path is known as Rock Grinder, which gives attack 1 combos and increased damage, and allows for attack 1 to be charged in order to cause 3 fissures that surge forward. His bottom path is known as Rubble Master, which increases his armor, allows for control over which direction his attack 3 will roll, and allows for attack 2 to be pressed during attack 3 to explode.
Yeah, definitely. Granite Crusher is a really powerful character. As we talked about a couple episodes ago back in Season 1, Crusher is actually the Skylander with the highest health, him and the Granite Crusher variation. So definitely that is a concern, and a lot of his attacks are pretty powerful as well, especially that primary attack of Crusher's Crusher, dealing 74. So, Granite Crusher, definitely a force to contend with.
Absolutely, which is why I have chosen him to champion for me today.
Very nice.
Now, who have you brought to the arena to face down this Titan that I have brought with me?
Well, I've decided to bring a character that I feel is at least slightly in the Valentine spirit, because when I think of Valentine's Day, other than for capitalism, I also happen to think of candy. Who doesn't want candy on Valentine's Day? And so because of that, I have decided to bring Pinata to the arena. Pinata is a magic Skylander of the melee battle type, and has a health of 840, a critical hit of 99, armor of 28, speed of 65, and luck of 39. His attack 1 is the Lollipop Slam, which deals 109 damage. His secondary attack is Candy Barf, where he barfs out a bunch of candy, and that deals 18 damage. And then his third attack is Pinata Summon, which deals 88 damage and summons out kind of these Pinata minions for him. His top path is Sweet and Smashy, which gives him additional lollipop types. The lollipops break faster, causing party mode, and that increases movement speed and damage, and decreases the damage taken. His bottom path is Life of the Party, which gives him an additional lollipop type. Pinatas replace fallen foes, and charging attack 2 gains a laser. Generally, Pinata is definitely a pretty powerful Skylander. He has those sensei kind of really high stats when it comes to things like critical hit, and when it comes to, damage, especially in terms of attack 1 and attack 3. So hopefully, even despite having much lower health than Crusher, Pinata should be able to put up at least somewhat of a fight here.
Oh, I agree. Pinata would be able to put up a fight. I don't believe he would be able to do enough, though. So how I would approach this is actually pretty straightforward, as you would expect from Crusher, a character whose sole purpose is to destroy things. I would have Granite Crusher charge in, swinging his hammer the whole way, deal as much damage as I can with that hammer. I would try to predict some of when Crusher's going to be taking the damage, though, and I would use the Rockfall to split up, avoiding damage, dealing a little bit as I go. Obviously, it doesn't add up that much in this case, because Pinata would only take a hit or 2 from it. It would allow me to get behind Pinata and fire off that turn to stone attack.
Yes.
Which would allow me a little bit more time to swing that hammer around.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely have to look out for that secondary attack there. But one thing that Pinata does have up on Crusher is that Crusher, when not in that Rock Slide form, is really slow, especially when it comes to dealing out damage with the primary attack. Whereas, Pinata, also very similarly kind of a smasher type, is able to deal out damage, more damage actually, with 109 damage, a little bit faster than Crusher is able to. So most likely, I'd probably go with the top path there to be able to have the party mode there, be able to gain even more speed, even more damage, and have less damage taken, and really try to go in and just get in a couple hits with a Lollipop Slam to try to just take off a lot of Crusher's top health right there. And if I can get in, just a couple hits, it's already getting Crusher a lot closer to my own health. Meanwhile, I'd also send out the other Pinatas and try to, have those help me as well.
I feel like this match would end up being really, really close. This is one of those where it comes down to playstyle. Because, well, Pinata does deal a bit more damage than Crusher does, and a little bit quicker. Not only does Granite Crusher have that massive HP total, being the highest in the Skylanders series, but he also has a pretty sturdy armor rating as well, which would allow for him to take a bit less damage from each of Pinata's attacks. So I feel this would actually come really, really close.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say that this would be a pretty close matchup, because both characters would be able to deal a decent amount of damage. Pinata would probably be able to deal a little bit more overall, but again, you know, Crusher does have quite a bit higher health compared to Pinata, and so I really do think that this would come down to playstyle, where, you know, it's really just going to be who can get in the most hits the fastest and who can dodge the other person's attacks the best. Pinata has a lot more speed, definitely, but so does Crusher if he is in that rock slide form. And in the rock slide form, he is able to deal a little bit more damage. So overall, it is going to kind of come down to how exactly, you know, you're going to want to try to deal damage with Crusher, and how I'm going to be able to, you know, deal damage with Pinata. So that's kind of what we're going to be dealing with here, and I think Pinata is going to be able to close in the gap pretty quickly with Crusher, but I really do think that it's going to ultimately come down to playstyle. I think Pinata has a very good chance of winning a couple of these, but so does Granite Crusher.
Exactly. I feel like if we were to look at this as a straight-up slugfest, just put the two Skylanders in front of each other and let them attack one it out, Pinata would win this hands down easily. But because there are alternative options, I feel like this would come down pretty much to the wire. I feel like this would work out. I feel like we would normally call this one closer to a draw, honestly.
I would agree. This very well might be a draw. I really do think it depends on how I'm playing as Pinata and, you know, how you're playing as Crusher, because, you know, as you said, if we're just pretty much using our primary attacks there, then Pinata is definitely going to win it. But, you know, if you are going to be dodging, going to be using that tertiary attack, it's going to be definitely a little bit closer, in that it is quite possible that Crusher is probably going to win a couple, but Pinata is probably also going to win a couple too.
Exactly.
So it's really kind of hard to judge exactly whether this would be like a 6 out of 11 or like a kind of fully even kind of 5 out of 5. I do really think it'd be pretty close.
It really would.
So yeah, overall it seems like this would be pretty much a pretty close matchup. So why don't you, the listeners, tell us in the comments who you think would win this matchup. Do you think that this would be in favor of Granite Crusher or Pinata? Or do you think that it'd be pretty close as well? Definitely let us know, because it certainly seems like this would be a draw this week in the Archean Arena. That brings us to the end of today's episode. You'll find our website and our individual channels listed in the description. Follow our Twitter.
You didn't really think this was over, did you? Now is the time, Portal Master, for Brock's Baddies, the segment where we analyze some of the creatures of Skylands and their capabilities in battle. For this holiday episode's version of Brock's Baddies, we're going to be reviewing the Evilized Sugar Bats and the Evilized Screechers.
Yes, two fairly well-recognizable enemies from Skylanders Swap-Force, and as Ditto likes to call them, and I think quite fittingly for this episode, Evilized Candy Bats, because they kind of look like they're rock candy.
Yeah, the Sugar Bat is, as the name would imply, it's a bat, but the Evilized Sugar Bats kind of look like they're made out of rock candy as opposed to flesh and fur as a normal bat would be. Now, these are an enemy that is very common throughout Skylanders Swap-Force. We see it a number of times, and it tends to fly around in circles and then swoop down flying directly at the Skylander in a straight line until it crashes.
Yes. Either into a wall or into the Skylander itself, dealing damage to the Skylander.
Acting in a similar manner to the evilized sugar bats, there are the evilized screechers, which are different in appearance. They still look like they're made out of rock candy, but they seem to be more designed in the shape of an owl, which makes a lot of sense with their name, because birds of prey are known for screeching. Now, these screechers behave in a manner similar to the candy bats, in that they fly around in circles and then fly directly at the Skylander until they hit a wall or the Skylander. But the difference between the screecher and the candy bat in this case is that the screecher has a trail of fire that kind of extends out from each of its wings and makes a sort of offensive barrier that deals damage to any Skylander who would dodge out of the way by moving out of the way as opposed to by jumping over the screecher, which in itself changes up the strategy a little bit as to how to deal with them.
Yeah, so they're both very similar in that, they pretty much have the same attack pattern. It's just that the Screechers have that added line of fire there that you have to watch out for, so it's going to be changing up your strategy a little bit. And honestly, I really like both versions of this bad guy. Like, they're really fun. I like the design of them. They're really cool. The non-evilized versions of them are pretty cute, and then, the evilized versions of them are pretty fun. They're not the most difficult enemy by any means. Like, you can dodge out of the way relatively easily, and then it takes just, a couple hits to be able to take them out. You can fire at them, and then, they might fly off again, do another pass, and then you can fire at them again, take them out. Depending on, of course, what mode you're in. If you're a Nightmare, it'll take quite a few hits. But still, like, the pattern there is pretty easy to get down, but it's still pretty fun. Like, it's a lot more fun to fight the Screechers and the Evil-Eyed Sugar Bats in comparison to, like, just a regular Chompy. Because, these villains are definitely a little bit on the easier side. They are introduced a little bit earlier in the game, but they're still pretty fun. They feel pretty unique. We've not really seen this attack pattern out of any other enemies really before, and it's just kind of fun to fight them. They're just like a really cool kind of enemy design.
They really are. Their design is rather enjoyable, both evilized and not. As you've stated, they are a little more challenging than the standard Chompy or even the standard Greeble.
Very true.
But they're not challenging to the point of being ridiculously hard. They're just the right amount so for the early stages of Skylander Swap-Force. And they do feel very unique. They're a lot of fun to deal with. Even when they appear in the later stages of the game, it's rather nice to see them, even in large numbers.
Yeah, you see them again in different places throughout the game, and one of the most noticeable is in the Chaos's mom boss fight, where you're not really fighting Chaos's mom, but she's sending tons of different waves of enemies at you, and one of those enemy types is the Evil-Eyed Sugar Bat and the Screechers. So it's really cool to see them back there where you might be having, 2 or 3 of them at a time along with like an Evil-Eyed Bog Hog in there as well. So not only are you having to kind of dodge their attack patterns of, swooping down, creating lines kind of blocking you off, you're also having to make sure that as they're kind of blocking you off and, creating these attack patterns that you're not going to be trapped in a certain way where the Bog Hog's going to be able to run into you. And that's kind of a really unique way of using their attack patterns.
It is. It was really unique, really creative, and that's what makes Bubba Greeb's boss rush really enjoyable, is enemies like the Sugar Bats and the Screechers. They kind of bring something more unique to the table when it comes to the hordes of enemies we're used to facing down in battle gates and such not.
Yeah. I totally agree. They definitely feel different than your average Chompy, than your average Greeble, and they just give you a little bit something more to do. Like, they're not hard. Like, once you figure out exactly what to do, like, they're pretty easy to take down. But, it still is a little bit more exciting. While it is, of course, repetitive once you do get that pattern down, it's still a lot more fun than, just dealing one hit to a Chompy and it's dead. It gives you a little bit more strategy, a little bit more thought process, and once they are in large numbers, you do actually kind of have to worry about where each one's going to be swooping down towards and trying to make sure that you don't get trapped too much and then get damaged due to that.
And not only are they a really unique, really fun enemy to deal with, but their non-evilized versions are absolutely adorable and kind of feel like they'd be a great pet to have or to bring home to your Valentine.
Very true. Couldn't agree more. Like, they would actually work really great as, like, a plush.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I would get like a Sugar Bat plush, put it right next to my Spyro plush that I have. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like it would be really, really cute.
Yes, couldn't agree more. So these enemies, their design's really cool. Their attack patterns pretty fun, and just overall, I think they made a great addition to the lineup of enemies in Skylanders overall. It would have really been cool to see them outside of Swap-Force, honestly. It would have been great to see them return in Trap Team or Superchargers, because they are a really cute design, and they're just fun to fight.
Now, to close out this segment, we will be rating each of Brock's baddies on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being absolutely awful, 7 being the greatest thing since sliced cobbler, and 4 being extremely average. Inklander, what would you give today's baddies a rating of?
I would say that I'd give the Evil Eye Sugar Bats and the Screechers a rating of 5 out of 7. So I think they're, good. They're definitely not mediocre. That might be a little bit more on the side of Chompies or Greebles. These are, fun to fight. They're cool, they're unique, and, they actually have an attack pattern that feels kind of fun to do, especially when they're in large numbers. I don't think they're anything too special, they're not anything too complex, but I definitely am not, opposed to seeing a bunch of, Screechers or Sugar Bats to fight. They definitely are a lot of fun to fight, and are really enjoyable. So I'd say 5 out of 7 for me.
I would agree with your rating of 5 out of 7. They're definitely above average. They're more fun to fight than the average creature would be. They're not a nuisance. They're enjoyable, but not the most enjoyable enemies in Skylands. So a solid 5 out of 7 it is.
Cool.
That brings us to the actual end of today's episode. You'll find our website and individual channels listed in the description. Follow our Twitter at SLPortalcasters for regular Skylanders discussion and Imaginator design challenges. Thank you for listening, and we will be returning April 4th with our Easter special episode. See you then. Bye. Is called Rock Slide, which allows Crusher to collapse into a pile of rubble that rolls around.
Yes, you could almost call him a rubble rouser. Sorry.
I mean, it's all in the spirit of Skylands.